Every morning a small cartoon appears in the Dundee Courier with the signature Fax in the corner. This is the work of artist Gordon Bell, who will tell us of his connections with D.C. Thomson.
I went down to D.C. Thomson and saw R.D. Lowe, who's the managing editor. And if I can say it properly, all he said was, "Where the hell have you been?" And he was in a small office at the end of the corridor. Next to it was the Dandy and the Beano room, and he said, "Go to the Beano and see George Mooney," who was the editor. He was a very, very nice man. Excellent. The best man I've ever worked for. And he said, "Oh, that's fine, in you come." And he said, "Right, I want a strip of this, that, and the next thing. Where you go, there you are." And that was it. Started. Just like that. There was no interviews or anything. That was it. Gone. So one of the first ones I did was Pom Pom, which was a little dark boy, rather similar to Tumwell here. But he was in a grass skirt. And he was in Africa, and he was always taking the mickey out of hunters. And he always ended up flattening the hunters. And everything went well for about 6 months, and then one of the teachers from inner London wrote and said, "This is disgraceful. We have coloured children in our school. How dare you put them in grass skirts?" So George said to me, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, if it bothers them, we'll just drop it." So that was 1958. And that was that was colour prejudice coming in then, which was really quite interesting. It was a rather feather type of grass skirt. Imagine this is solid black. And he was a nice light tan. And the hunter would be in the background. And of course he was always the idiot, complete with guns and all the rest. And it was always bazookas that often went and blew him up. So little Pom Pom, he was a nice little guy, and he always won, and we could never really understand why they didn't like it. But that was 1958, and we decided not to worry about it. So that was my first job with D.C. Thomson. So from then on, I went and helped to keep Dennis the Menace on the go, because at that time in the chapel law, Dennis the Menace was his, but he could never keep up, and I had to go and do extra pages to keep his work going. And that started, and when he got unwell, I had to do his work, and when he stopped, I carried on and did his work. Just the same as I did with Leo Baxendale, and it was doing Dennis. Nearly the way he is today, but not quite. He had an even stranger hairdo, because it's so straight today that it's not the same. The other thing is the mouth came out of the nose, which I found quite interesting. And sometimes the eyebrows went straight down to the nose, so you were left with a nose with a mouth coming out of it and eyes coming out of it. And I thought it was really quite good fun. But you didn't have any teeth. All you had was a tongue, a red tongue came in there like that. The great thing about Dennis the Menace was he could be really strange. The arms could extend, and you used to know David Law's work because he kept changing it and had to change it in ink, and you'd be left with bits stuck on there and drawn over, and then bits stuck on the top of that and drawn over again. And sometimes you had it about that thick on the page, and that was how it came out. It was really quite funny. And his trousers were just black trousers, and his knees. Try not to run out of room, but I might very well do. Again, it's all speed. I prefer to work quickly. Now, Dennis the Menace, right? The backgrounds in most of the strips were very precise and all the rest. But he would have a background like this. A little building there, and that was the background. It was so far away, and you'd maybe even have a tree there. You might have a road running to there like that, but it's brilliant because nobody used that. That was really good in these days. This one here, this is one I've done earlier. This is Roger the Dodger. I can't remember what happened to the guy who was doing it, and I got to do it. And I was still doing it in the 90s. This is in the classic comics, which is old comics. We may get some interesting stuff out of here. Oh, is that mine? No, it's not my one, no. I did 3 beers eventually. But this was my friend Bob McGrath. And he was the one that inspired me to change my way of working, because what you normally did was you drew a pencil of that, handed it in, and they said, I like, that's okay, or change that to that, and all the rest, and you changed. Then you would ink it in and then go back and hand it in. Sometimes you had to change that as well. But what he always complained was that the pencil looked so much fresher than the ink, because the ink was, every pencil line you went over and did it all, and it became boring. Whereas what I learned to do was to take the pencil and just do it quickly, because we'll just do it that face there, which we've already done. Now, this would be, you would make then it totally fresh. You would only sketch in roughly where you wanted things to go, and you drew it as you went along, and you changed the angle of where the nose was or where the face was. That's though you had to think all the time. It wasn't a case of just following slavishly a pencil line, and it made it much brighter and fresher, because if you follow the pencil line it does tend to go blank. In the Communications Gallery in Eureka, it's a museum where children come first, and you cannot enter the museum unless you are accompanied by a child. There was 3 galleries. One was the body, The other one was the environment, and the other one I had was communication. And one of the most interesting things that happened was that when it was opened by Prince Charles, video telephones in the world, and they came from Telecom in Halifax, and Prince Charles was at one end of the gallery and the youngster at the other end, and they were speaking to each other over these telephones, and it was, wow, this is absolutely amazing. It scrolled down every second and changed the faces, and he was quite chuffed and went round the gallery and all the rest. And he walked out the door, and two men came from Telecom, one grabbed one grabbed the other, and disappeared. They were so expensive and so unique that they just disappeared, and there was only a drawing put up in their place. Well, Halifax is 350 miles away, and it was quite difficult for me to get down there too often. So what happened was that I drew the murals that had to go on the wall, then coloured them. It was so that a painter could draw around these, and it was a case of colouring for dot to dot, and if it's number 20 it must be green and things like that. And that's where I had to fax down all the drawings down to Eureka, and it got to the point where they said, "Ah, you're a fax man," and that was it. So that's where fax came from, the fact that I had to send this down. And I didn't paint anything in the whole place. I drew things, I coloured them, and I sent them down, and what they did was they turned the drawings into a cell which is on film, and projected it onto the wall or onto whichever they wanted, drew around about it, and then used the colours that I sent down, and that was it. This was a special job for Land Rover. They did put Land Rovers on railways. They also put flotation bags on Land Rovers and used them at cows. They used them for ploughing too. That was the original idea for Land Rover, was that it was a car and a tractor all piled into one. This is my black book. This is scribbles of things that have just occurred to me. It all comes from life, and it all comes not necessarily directly. Cartoons are very difficult because you can only have one person talking and you can only have one action. Now, this was my cousin's wife in Australia. She's a great one for putting names on photographs, and she really blew me off for not having names on the photographs. So then this is my reply to her. This naturally is the wife. And a highly intelligent husband, of course. You've only to indicate that it's a picture in the background, so what is in it doesn't really matter at all. It just sets a scene. I never like to draw the same people really twice. Everything's got to be fresh and new, so that's why there's so many different people in the cartoon. The meat of the cartoon will be coming along in just about a couple of minutes. Because she's been telling him that he hasn't been putting the names on the back, which is sacrilege, absolutely. Why bother taking photographs? Because in years to come nobody will know who's who. So the husband really knows what to do. A pile that he's still waiting here to do. He's got to have a chair to sit in. I like to do it without noses, because sometimes noses in women can get in the way and it looks better and it's more fun. Table edge. And me, but to save time. The reason you do that is to bring up who is speaking, so that the black immediately takes your eye to that character, and that's where the words come from. The whole thing is not a drawing, it's the idea.